Okay, today is the second chapter. It's called Number Sense Review. Number sense is where you just have a good sense of how to handle a wide variety of little numbers kind of problems. So for instance, principles of exponents. We need you to know how to handle it when there's a power to a power, as opposed to two things being multiplied that both have powers. All right, so let's get into it right away here. Exponents. These two are different. I get this all the time where kids think that both of these are -5 squared and therefore positive 25. That is wrong. They are not both positive 25. One of them is, one of them isn't. Which one of these would come out to positive 25? What do you think, the top one or the bottom one? A lot of people are saying top one. Anybody say the bottom one? Oh, there's a fair number of bottom ones. Raise your hand if you think it's the top one. Raise your hand if you think it's the bottom one. Seem to be more people saying the bottom one now. All right, so let's think about this more carefully. Which one of these do you know is -5 times -5? The bottom one. The bottom one is -5 times -5, so it is positive 25. And the top one is -25. And I oftentimes have people like, no, that's not what I've been told. For my whole high school career or my whole middle school career, I was told the other thing. I can just settle it for you this way. Just take a calculator, and if you type in -5, and then you say squared, okay, the squared button, not the -5 times -5, of course, that'll come out to be positive. But if you take -5 and you hit the squared button and hit enter, it'll say -25. Okay, now if you didn't want to believe the calculator, here's a way to think of it. What's 5 squared? Just 5 squared. 25, and then you apply the negative to it. It's like the order of operations. It's like that thing's getting squared before you apply the negative on the outside. Okay? Whereas this one means -5 times -5. All right, so we need to get that straight in your head. That brings up this point on the right. So if you had x squared and then you stuck in -7, does that mean this as A, or does it mean this, B? It's got to be one or the other. When you have an x squared and you drop in a negative, does that act more like A or more like B? I want your opinion. If you think A, raise your hand. If you think it acts more like B, raise your hand. All right, there's more B's this time again, and the majority is right again, thankfully. That's definitely not true in the real world. The majority isn't always right, but there we go. -7 squared. Why do I know that? Because x is like a variable. No, x is a variable. Is like an empty parentheses. So that's like empty parentheses squared. That's what x means. Then you drop in the -7, and it means -7 in parentheses squared. And therefore it's this one. And you just learned 2 seconds ago, is that one positive or negative? Positive. Positive. Positive 49 is your final answer. Okay, so I'll show you that one more time. Let's say you came across this on the ACT test. If x is equal to -2. A lot of you would have gotten it wrong coming into this. Now see if you get it right now. Write down the answer, turn it my way. I'll tell you if you're right or not. Not what the problem is, what's the answer? I'm seeing 2 people so far. Turn it my way. All right. Everybody who has showed me is right. That's a good sign. It's +4. Okay, that does not mean this, though, just to clarify. If it was that, then the answer would be -4. What it does mean is this. You have an empty spot squared, and you drop in -2. And when you do that, you get +4. Okay, one more time. What's the answer to that one? Turn it my way, and I'll tell you if you're right or not. Yes, 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 yours was right. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, there's quite a few that did not turn it my way, and I'm waiting for you. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 it's -36. Okay, good. Moving on. So, this is a bunch of practice on that same exact topic. The only kind we haven't tried is this kind. So let's think for a second. Negative 3 squared is in the parentheses. That means it gets done first, right? And then we multiply it all by a negative 1. That's what that on the outside is kind of like. So would you write down just that last one? What do you think it means? And then would you please compare with the person I paired you with, which I think is in forward and front and back this time, instead of like left to right, because I was pairing you by tests that you took. See if they got the same thing as you got. I hope you're getting an answer of either 9 or negative 9. That's the question. 3 squared is not 6. All right. So this one, do you get when you're inside the parentheses, you got to ignore everything except what's inside. Okay, so this is negative 3 squared is the first thing. That comes out to be negative 9. Then there's an extra negative on the outside, and that turns it into positive 9. You should have said positive 9. I can get how somebody would say, well, wait a minute, didn't you just say that if it was in negatives and it would come out, and you have a parentheses, it would come out positive? But this, there's no parentheses affecting the squaring here. The parentheses are just making you do that part first. If you wanted it to be that way, it would be like this. Now that one, what does that one come out to be? Positive or negative 9? That one comes out negative. Because this part would be positive 9, and then you slap on an extra negative, becomes negative 9. Okay, moving on. So I think we've done enough practice on those. Let's move on to square roots. Did you know that when they have a square root sign without the roof on it, it still means square root? This little symbol right here, that means square root of 25, just as if it goes all the way across. It's the same thing. I think in the old days, they didn't have a like if you were on a typewriter, they had this character for when they didn't have when it was a typewriter, and they had to type just a character at a time. Typewriters couldn't like type over 5 things at once. They could just type one thing. They had one key that was going to come up and smack the paper, and so when they did square roots, they used those. Next thing, did you know that square roots actually have a little 2 right there? You may not have ever seen that until now. You saw the square root of 25 like this, and you just said, oh, that's a square root sign. Technically, there's a 2 right there. Why did your teacher never show you that before? Because you only did square roots. But now we're going to get into more complicated ones like this. Cube root of 8, or 4th root of 32. Okay, so what does it mean to be a square root? Same thing as it did in middle school. I guess 25, square root of 25 is 5. But it's just that there needs to be a little 2 there. And also, did you know that to the 1/2 power means square root? Anything to the 1/2 power means square root of. So if I asked you right now, what is 36 to the 1/2 power, what's the answer? 6. Good. Another common misconception is that the answer is 6 and negative 6. It's not. When you're doing square roots like this, there's only one answer, and it's the positive square root of it. This symbol right here means the principal square root of. Principal means positive. This is only positives. You're not going to get a negative answer out of a square root. Okay, so let's move on to this, simplifying radical. Square root of 48. So if you want to simplify square root of 48, you got to be able to simplify it into 2 square roots. Well, what times what makes 48? Pick anything you want. 6 and 8. Okay, that works. There's another combo of combos that would, another set of numbers that would work. 12 and 4, wouldn't it be? 12 and 4. 16, good, and 3. Those all multiply to 48. Now, which one works out the nicest? This one. Why do I like that one better than anything else? Because the square root of 16 comes out to a nice big number, and the square root of 3 can't be simplified anymore. So what is the square root of 16? So it's really 4 root 3. That's what root 48 simplifies down to. You might say, why wouldn't this way work? I like this better. Because this can be simplified down into root 2 times root 3. And this can be simplified down into root 4 and root 2. And then the root 4 can be broken down even further. So the point is, you want to try to break this into the biggest perfect square that you can. I'll give you another one. Root 27. Simplify that one for me. 2 roots. Root, and multiply.
3 and 9?
Yes. 3 and 9. And that works out really nice because the square root of 9 is, so the final answer would be 3 root 3, I think you meant. Yes. 3 root 3. Okay? Let's do another one. Root 40. Think of any 2 square roots and then try to find one that has a biggish perfect square in it. 8 and 5 works, except 5 and 8 aren't perfect squares. So give me another one that has perfect square in it. Root 4 and root 10. And I know a lot of you are probably thinking, is that really the biggest one there is? Yep. Okay, so the root 4 is really 2, root 10. And then some of you are saying to yourself, why? But the 10 can break up further. Yeah, it breaks up into a 5 and a 2, and neither one of them is a perfect square. So it's better to leave it like this than to say 2 times the square root of 5 times the square root of 2. That's even more messy. We don't want to mess things up when we're trying to simplify them. All right, let's do one more like that. Square root of 50.
25 root 2.
You're close. You got the 2 numbers, but you said it wrong.
2 root 25. Root 5, 2 root 5. 5 root.
You said 25 and 2 in the first place, and you were right. It's just that you didn't use square roots. Now simplify it. 5 root 2. There we go. Does that make sense? That is simplifying square roots. Okay, so moving on to this square root of 98. Ooh, that was a nasty one. Except when you realize that 49 goes into it. What is it?
7 root 2.
It's root 49 and root 2, which is really what? 7 root 2. Okay, this one's kind of nasty because it looks like it's already been simplified. But the 8 can break up into 2 things, one of which is a perfect square. Remember that you're always turning these into multiplies. We just simplify that one down and compare with the kid next to you that I paired you with. See if you guys get the same thing. I'll pause for a second while you do that. So I would have said root 4, root 2, and then you just have to know to break it down a little further. Negative 2 times square root of 2. And then what does that make? Negative 4 root 2. There we go. You're in higher algebra. Welcome aboard. That's one of those top 20 skills, is to be able to recognize those and simplify those down. All right, this one has no real solution. It's called imaginary. Why? Because you can't find the square root of negative 24 because it would have to be 2 negative numbers, but then negative times negative doesn't make a negative. So this is impossible. Okay, so anytime you have a negative underneath the square root, we are going to say that that is an imaginary answer and there's no real solutions. You can go like this until we teach you more about how to do them with imaginary numbers, which we will. Right, for right now, we're allowing you to just say there's no real solutions, and that's an okay shortcut right there. Or no real numbers. Why do we say no real numbers? Because there are imaginary numbers you can use. And there's actually definitions of that, but we'll get into that later. All right, do you get the negatives are important on these? So what's the first one? It's simple. 3. What's the next one? Be careful. Negative 3, and the last one. And therefore you'd say no solutions, or you're only imaginary solutions, or you could say there's no real solutions. Okay. I don't think we need to practice those. You were staying with me really well, and I think you're fine. Absolute value. Oh, wait. Some of you are going to ask about these I ones. So what is 4i? Well, that just means 4 times I, and I is an imaginary number. Okay? So you do not need to be able to simplify that anymore right now. 5i just means 5 times I, and I is an imaginary number. So that answer is imaginary. It's not real. When we get into the unit called complex numbers, we'll teach you all about those. All right. Remember that this square root symbol means that the same as the square root all the way across. Can you do this one, or is it like not allowed? You can do it. And what's the answer? -4. Good. Okay. Moving on. Absolute value is how far away you are from 0. So do you get that this is 3 spots away from 0, and so is that? Both of them are 3 spots away from 0. That's why you'd say the absolute value of -3 is 3 spots away from 0. And the absolute value of regular 3 is also 3. It's 3 spots away from 0. Technically, the definition of absolute value is distance away from 0. Okay, so you don't want to always think, oh, absolute values make it the opposite. No, it doesn't. Absolute values make the answer positive. That's true because distances are always positive. Have you ever once in your life said, yeah, I'm about -2 miles away? No. Distances are always positive. What's the shortest distance that's even possible? 0. But you can't go negative. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so what's the absolute value of 5? It's 5. It's how far away is that from 0? How far away is that from 0? 5. Now, how far away is that from 0? And then we make it so -5. Good. And how far away is that from 0? And then we make it negative. So you can have negatives, but only if you put the negative on the outside. Okay, moving on. Why don't you try these 4 and compare with the kid next to you. They're not 4 nice, simple answers. Test whether or not you get absolute values or not. This means multiply by the way, in case you forgot. 2 numbers budged up next to each other like that mean multiply. So check with the kid behind you when they're done. Okay, so here we go. Absolute value of -9 means how far is it from 0? And it's 9 spots away from 0. Absolute values are kind of like parentheses. You got to go inside and do what's inside. Do you know what a double negative right next to each other means? Positive. So that's +5, and then you make it the absolute value, which means how far is that from 0? And it's 5. Okay, this one. How far is this from 0? 3. And then you times it by -2 makes -6. Very good. And this last one is 12 spots away from 0, but then we make it -12. How many of you got them all right? Okay, good. Moving on. Exponents, squares, absolute values, and negatives. In other words, they're all thrown together at the same time. Then it's all just about doing it in the right order. So you jump to the inside on all hard math problems. You go to the inside and work them from the inside out. So we're starting on the inside here, and we have -4. Then we do the absolute value of that and get what? 4. And then we take the square root of that and get what? There you go. There's an example one. This one, I'll give you a hint, isn't going to come out to a nice number, but it'll be able to simplify down to like 5√2 or something like that. Pause for a second while I give that a shot. Okay, here's what we should have done. This is 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27, square root of 27. But that breaks into √9 and √3, and that's 3√3. Raise your hand if you had 3√3. Awesome. Next one. In order, absolute value of 12 is the first thing you would do. Absolute value of 12 is 12. And then what's next? Powers or negative signs? Powers. 12 squared is 144. Now make it -144. I know some of you were thinking, but isn't that -12 squared? Even if it was, wouldn't you do the squaring first and then make the answer negative? You should. There's no parenthesis locking that negative onto that 12. So that would be +144 either way. Okay, the next one. Inside out. Absolute value of this -16 is? Square root of that is? 4. Good. The next one is negative square root of 81. Square root of 81 is 9. Make it negative. It's -9. But then they take the absolute value and it makes it +9. Then you take the square root. And then you throw on one last negative. There you go. Okay, moving on. These are all the same. We don't need to do more practice of that. You're good at it. And tonight's homework is the number sense review worksheet. As long as you're hooked back up to Schoology again, you should be able to find it. And I think it's not, there's like lots of questions, but there's lots of really easy questions. Okay? Yes?
What if
All right, read me the exact problem. Okay. Okay, I missed that last part. I have a -3 in parentheses, and now what? Power of 3? Is that it? All right, that means -3 times -3 times -3. So that means -3 times -3 makes +9, times -3 makes -27. Yep. Well, that's with just like this, then what happens first? The 3 to the third. No negative. So then this would become what? What's this? 27, and then you throw on a negative. -27. You might be saying, but wait a minute, they're the same. That's okay, because to the third power is different than squaring. Let's say I had -4 to the fourth. That's going to do it times itself 4 times, and that means there'd be 4 negatives in it, which means the answer would be positive. Positive something really big. I think it's 64. No, it's even bigger than that. Let's make it simpler. Wait, let's do this. Okay, this one would mean -1 times -1 times -1 times -1. There's 4 negatives, so it'd be +1. If it was to the power of 3, let's start with what it means. It means -1 times -1 times -1. Yes. If there's 3 of them, then the answer will be negative. If there's 4 or 6 or 8 or 10 or any even number, they'll all cancel each other out and it'd be positive. So this one would be -1. Okay, now we're getting down to the last few minutes here. Probably about 6 minutes left. So I'm going to stop the video. What you guys are going to do is look at your last few questions on that test. If you want to do corrections, you have the option to do a retake on this test if you want to. If you do the corrections on it, you can have a retake, and that would imply, man, I only got like 15 out of 25. I better do some work and figure this out. Yeah, you really should, because if you don't know 10 of the major things you need to know coming into this class, you need to fix that. Okay. The other thing that's kind of like that is the top 20. I believe I gave you the assignment, but not due today, to do the next version of the top 20. Didn't I? Okay. I said Wednesday? Okay. So those of you that haven't started that yet, top 20, version 2, is due Wednesday. So today's a pretty easy homework assignment, I think you have to admit. So then what you should probably do to get all ahead of the game is get top 20 version number 2 from my website, davidserver.com. Get that puppy done. And there's no secret here that the key is there. If you need help, look at the key. I'm not counting this one like a test because you'll be able to check the key. I have other versions of this that you won't have the key for that I'll use for the actual test a month from now. But we'll take some practices in the meantime. All I ask is that you get better. All right, that's all I have for you for today.